Hello, this is Nitin Dahad with the Times, and I'm sitting and talking to Camilo Buscaron, who's the CEO and founder of Alafia. Camilo, hello, how are you?
Hey Nitin, how are you? Good to see you again.
Good to see you. I think the last time we met was in Tokyo, and you were just off to supercomputing in Atlanta.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. We were in Japan, then we came back to Atlanta, Georgia for supercomputing, and it's been a whirlwind since.
You've been developing, you're effectively a system maker, OEM, and you've been working on, I would say, a supercomputer, but for specific applications. Just tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, at Alafia, we're making personal supercomputers to accelerate the discovery, diagnostic, and treatment of cancer. Most of our systems are at the bleeding edge of computational power, memory capacity, and memory bandwidth throughput. That's some of the key elements of our architecture. Obviously, we also have our architected a system from the ground up to be the best performance for AI inference. So that's what makes our systems unique.
I think there's a lot more that goes on under that. I think when we first met at Embedded World, maybe a couple of years ago, well, I mean, a year and a half ago, I think you showed me a system which was quite powerful. Tell me what's the basis of that power?
Yeah, about a year and a half ago, we showcased our first prototypes at Embedded World with our partners at Ampere Computing. We showcased a system that at the time was the most powerful computer, single node personal computer ever made, 128 CPU cores, 2 terabytes of RAM. We chose the form factor, the all-in-one integrated form factor. So it's like it's in the computing OEM world is a hybrid between having an engineering workstation and an all-in-one interactive computer. That's our form factor. And at the time, we showcased the most powerful single node personal computer in the world, 128 CPU cores, 2 terabytes of RAM, 4 latest generation NVIDIA GPUs, just the speeds and feeds. And since then, we architected our systems based on that architecture to scale out the compute capacity and capabilities to solve some of the most challenging scientific problems. So in the last year and a half, we have architected a lineup of products that go from 128 CPU cores, 192 CPU cores, using the Ampere 1 latest generation processor with DDR5 memory, 12 to 16 channels of memory channels, etc. So we showcased at Supercomputing last fall a system with 256 CPU cores, 4 terabytes of RAM, and then we are in the process of showcasing this year at Supercomputing 384 dual Ampere 1 processor system, which is being brought up in our labs at the moment, and then we might have even something more powerful before the end of the year with Ampere 1 Aurora. What we showcase is we can add any add-on additional PCIe card, right? So what we have showcased with NVIDIA H100s, dual NVIDIA H100s, and latest generation RTX GPU for graphics. But obviously those are add-on components that we can always have a different supplier.
Now, it's all very well, those numbers and your performance, but it's for specific things. And I think one of the things you've specialized in the 2 years since you formed the company is just focusing on a specific application and just going for it. This one specifically is medical imaging. Tell me a little bit about that.
Right. Some of the challenges that we saw with our partners, with the health system partners, is that analyzing data and getting value out of the data they have generated from patient records has become very difficult. And part of it is infrastructure, part of it is the application layer, and there's a renaissance in the image management, lab management software, as well as analysis software, to create applications that leverage modern AI to provide more valuable insight. And our systems essentially help accelerate those type of workflows. Once an AI model has been trained using the most powerful servers in the world to train a model, they can take that model and run it in our system real time highly interactive, secure, encrypted locally. So one of the best examples that I like to give is when, DeepSeek, the company in Hangzhou,
Yes.
released their 671 billion parameter model. There was no computer that could really run the model, but for us, we could run it. It took about an hour to download because it's 404 gigs, but within 5 minutes, we were running the 671 billion parameter model, interactive, real time. Um, yeah.
So in the medical world, especially in the pathology world, there are some open source models out there.
Sure.
So which one are you working with here?
Yeah, so when we look at the DeepSeek is a specific LLM model, right? When we look at the medical imaging specific use cases, there are applications like QPath, for example, that
QPath,
are
yes.
completely open source that the ecosystem can leverage, and because it's extensible and adaptable, we work with the ecosystem to create additional tooling that health systems can benefit from.
And you gave me an example, I think, earlier, and just say typically, for example, in a path lab, if there's 200 images coming in for analysis, you're helping that throughput much faster by doing those, I think you said within minutes or hours in terms of trying to analyze, for example, cancer.
Yeah, if we look at the typical small pathology lab, they probably generate 500 to 600 glass slides a day. Once those get digitized, the throughput increases. But there are academic labs that are generating maybe 10,000 glass slides a day. So at that scale, the type of production-ready solution that labs require are completely have to be completely robust, have to be able to perform at high degrees of accuracy and precision. So that's the value proposition of our production systems.
Now you're targeting medical and imaging at the moment, but this personal supercomputer or desktop supercomputer typically can be targeted at various other applications. And one of those, I guess, is aerospace and also robotics. Tell me a little bit about your robotics background, and I think you have a story to tell about so how maybe some people might have got the idea of physical AI.
Yeah, I've made a whole career in robotics. I've made a name in robotics. Everything I've ever wanted to do in robotics, I did it. I wrote a seminal paper on swarm robotics when I was about 19 years old. At the time, there weren't very many people doing swarm robotics.
I saw some of that at swarm drones at UTS in Canada. It's amazing what they were doing. This is in 2017.
Yeah, our paper was much earlier, 2007. But yes.
Okay.
And then I spent a long career working on at the time, in the early 2000s, at least in the United States, most robotics was funded by the defense sector. So we spent a number of years working on defense systems. I got lucky enough that I have a mentor, Tom Bells, sadly has passed. Tom Bells created healthcare technology, and Tom recruited me to work on a cardiology surgical tool. So that's how I made the transition from sort of defense to medical. We created this cardiology surgical tool that was acquired by one of the large Harvard manufacturers, and it's now in production for aorta valve replacement and doing a suturing tool. So that led me to Silicon Valley. I ended up in Silicon Valley after that because I was looking to get more into the sort of commercial space of robotics, and it was at a time where Silicon Valley was also back in revival, and some of the investments have shifted from robotics investments have shifted from defense to more commercial. So I ended up at a warehouse robotics company that has also since exited. From there, I got recruited to big computing companies.
And one of the first one that was NVIDIA, followed by AWS. Just tell me about your stint at NVIDIA, and I think you're having a sort of interesting story to tell.
Funny enough, yeah, interestingly enough, I ended up at NVIDIA. One of the co-founders of NVIDIA is an alumni where I attended University of Florida. But I really didn't know much about NVIDIA Corporation, and I ended up there I was recruited to work on the self-driving car program. very small teams. Concourse.
Well, so context, what year was that?
This was mid 2000s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So I ended up there, and funny enough, yeah, we most of my work there was the work that the team did was on automotive to deliver the Tegra processor
Yes.
to autopilot systems and in-vehicle image analysis. Also, because of that, when successful, my specific task was building the vehicle infrastructure, a product called Hyperion, that we delivered to OEMs, tier ones, to evaluate the technology that NVIDIA created. And because that product was successful, Jensen came back and asked, how can we scale the validation and verification of autopilot, and challenged us to think through that, and we created a server infrastructure called Drive Constellation that would run a simulator for the vehicle dynamics, and then it had the same automotive ECU that runs in the vehicle, but as a hardware in the loop simulation infrastructure. So yeah, that sort of started the journey in computing and simulation, and for me, yeah.
And do you think you taught Jensen a few things about robotics?
Yeah, I think Jensen got quite inspired by some of the work that we also that we did at the time in robotics. This was the very early days of NVIDIA robotics, and
Yeah.
we had a number of projects there where he got some good ideas from. Yeah.
Okay. And then you moved on to AWS. Why did you leave NVIDIA? Is that because you felt like there was enough to do there?
Funny enough, I left NVIDIA because I thought self-driving car was very difficult. It was a very difficult problem,
Yeah.
and that would take significantly much longer to be able to have an autonomous vehicle. So I originally left NVIDIA because we had the idea of we wanted to simplify the problem, and I wanted to create these autonomous scooters.
Ah, okay.
So I left to sort of figure out how to bring autopilot to autonomous scooters, and thankfully, this was right before the pandemic, so I'm glad we didn't go into that business. And I got recruited by AWS to run the robotics simulation, AWS Robotics, the robotics simulation business, where we have a number of products there in simulation and also fleet management.
With that, then I think this is where I think you were working on something, and then you realised that there's something that needs to be solved. So then this is where then you got into this idea of doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, I was very grateful for my time at AWS because I was placed in an open source group with a gentleman named Adrian Cockcroft, and Adrian ran the cloud strategic initiatives. And Adrian gave me the opportunity to work on the robotics open source through ROS and spearheading ROS 2, which is now the main operating system, is software used for all the robots worldwide. And that was the core business, the core robotics business. But Adrian also gave us the opportunity to work on things that may not be so core to AWS, and we created a computer vision technology that became very popular, open source computer vision technology that also became very popular. And that was what led us to the realization that there is a need for infrastructure and application level solutions for medical imaging.
Which is how you started Alafia. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the industry and the trends. And I think there's so many things going on right now. If you think about it, there's just more and more compute, energy, and then there's kind of like everything's going to the edge. What are your thoughts? You've also been inspired differently, and you think there's, from what I've understood talking to you previously, is you think we're going down a certain path, but that's not necessarily the path that will lead us the best results.
I agree with that. I think there's two aspects, or two or three aspects to the technology that probably we're very likely to be contrarian. One of them, I think the industry is moving to a sense that if we need more compute power and more compute capacity, then we just increase the power requirement. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that. I think we probably should update our methodology for learning algorithms so they're more efficient and effective, and then we right size computing and power capabilities based on what's needed to solve the problems, right? So that's one aspect of it. I think at the technology level, obviously, silicon is a 2-year cycle for developing any silicon architecture and taping out a chip. So we need, m- you know, um, we need the freshers and new engineers that are thinking beyond the 2 year cycle to figure out ahead of time what gets added into architectures. Because a lot of problems can be solved at the architectural level before you actually have to tape out silicon.
I think you also said something about some of the LLMs and some models that we're using right now, probably based on something that was done 10, 20 years ago, which is not really addressing the problem we have today.
Correct, yeah. I think part of our approach had been to, part of the modern AI approach had been to enable algorithms that have been around for 20, 30 years by just throwing compute power and compute capacity to it. Um, the likely best approach is to actually optimize for the problems needed by creating new learning algorithms that are more efficient. And there's a whole communities of researchers working on that. I think some of the advancements in reinforcement learning is starting to show that. But there are algorithms that are still not yet quite working as we would hope.
Okay, and what about, is that the reason we're seeing a lot of AI hardware accelerator chips, either consolidation or falling by the wayside?
Yeah, I think the market consolidation for AI-specific hardware comes off the heels that general-purpose computing and accelerated computing can advance significantly faster than bespoke architectures at the chipset level. So I think that it's sort of an obvious consolidation in the market that is happening, that is yet to continue to happen. I'm excited to see architectures beyond x86, right? So that's why we're here in England, right? To look at modern architectures and postmodern architectures that are going to accelerate the future of AI.
Talking of architectures, we're sitting in front of the BT Tower in London, and fortunately we couldn't do it there because there's a big fence in front of us, but otherwise, yes, modern versus traditional architectures.
Well, I think the UK, one of my, I think I've gotten to check two boxes out of my my two things that I wanted to always wanted to do in the UK. One, Silverstone,
Which you did this week.
I did this weekend. Congratulations to the team. And then lots of engineers and lots of technology that goes into that, and it's
Well, I see Lando Norris
racing.
won, and I interviewed Lando 3 years ago at CES.
Yeah. I'm more of an Oscar fan. I think his mate is doing well, so I'm glad I think it got stolen from him, but then my other were always been inspired, Bletchley Park, right? So if you think about the beginning of computing. It's happened in Great Britain for over 75 years, right?
Yes.
So I think so we're gonna talk about the history of computing in Great Britain because that's why we're here,
that's
right?
another topic we can talk about.
Yeah.
But Camilo, thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you so much, and
Thank
pleasure
you.
to be here.